Many years ago, the Lenni Lenape Indians, in traveling north from the tidewater in the Delaware River below the Trenton Falls, would follow the Assunpink Creek up to where the Shebbekonk branched off to the left. The coming of the white folks spelled doom for the red people, their land, and their way of life. Daniel Cox of England bought 30,000 acres, which was originally in the township of Hopewell, and then sold farms or large parcels to the early settlers, including William Green. This is the story of those Greens who once lived, worked, and died on that farm from 1699 until the late 1800s. It is also the story of their historic home, which still stands on the College of New Jersey campus in Ewing Township, New Jersey, the William Green House. Old trees, when you were young and small your shade, there at your feet a stranger form they laid. Now many others rest beside his bed. For many a mossy stone the names disclose of Hart, Reed, Scudder, Howe, Clark, and Rose, Hunt, Burroughs, Reeder, Hendrickson, and Green, Fish, Welling, Temple, Lanning, Moore, and Dean, Cook, Chambers, Carl, and Muirhead, Furman, Lott, and hundreds without stone to mark the spot. These slow processions in their sad array, from age to age have traced their mournful way. A few lines from a poem written in 1852, prompted by the natural destruction of one of two oaks in Ewing Presbyterian churchyard. Many Greens lie buried in close proximity to the remaining old oak. This is a fitting place to begin our story, since all those Greens who once owned the William Green House lie buried here in this churchyard. William Green, ancestor of the families of that name in this region, dissatisfied with some new relation in his father's family, left his native England at the early age of 20 and landed at the port of Philadelphia. Soon after he visited Long Island. He there became acquainted with the family of John Reeder, recently arrived from England, whose daughter, Joanna, in process of time, he married and removed to Ewing Township about 1700. He purchased 345 acres and on it erected the first brick house in the township, which is still standing. His qualities were such as to give him distinction, for he was appointed one of the first judges of Hunterdon County. He was present at the first meeting of that body in Maidenhead. From the frequent mention of his name in public affairs and important business transactions, he was evidently a prominent and useful citizen. William and Joanna's first two children, Richard and Joseph, were born on Long Island. The third, William Jr., was born on the farm. By 1709, the number of children blossomed to 11. Their farm was located in what was then Burlington County. To reach the farm as the trout swims, from the mouth of Assunpink Creek near Trenton Falls, head upstream to where the Shebbekonk veers off to the left. Turn left and head upstream. Near the present Ewing-Lawrence border, the creek forks into east and west branches. Follow the east branch a meandering mile across the Ewingville Road and then Green Lane until you reach what was once the Green Homestead. The farm was situated about a mile and a half east of Ewing Church. Another mile and a half to the west of the church lived Joanna's brother Isaac Reeder, on a farm he had purchased from Zebulon Heston in 1710. It was called Rose Hill. Sometime around 1715, William and Joanna purchased a farm adjacent to Rose Hill, bordering present-day Upper Ferry Road in West Trenton. They built a new home and moved their family to that farm. We know that from 1715 until 1718, the Reverend Robert Orr's family lived on the old farm, probably along with two of the Green children, Joseph and William Jr. During that time period, Orr was pastor of the Old Trenton and Maidenhead churches. He came here from Northern Ireland and was the first pastor of the congregations. One of his children died on the farm and is buried in an unmarked grave in Ewing Church Cemetery. Judge William Green died in 1722. Joanna outlived him by many years. When she died, Richard inherited the new farm. His brothers Joseph and William inherited and divided the original farm. Joseph built a new home near present-day Crescent Avenue, which still stands. His brother William inherited the original farmhouse. He was probably already living in the house at that point, along with his wife Lydia. Lydia came to America from York with her father. stepmother, some siblings, and an uncle. They settled in Pennington. Their farm bordered Stony Brook. The Armitage homestead stands to this day. The original home is to the rear. Her father, Enoch Armitage, was the town blacksmith. He was also the first ruling elder of Pennington Presbyterian Church, where he sometimes preached, and now lies buried. William and Lydia raised 4 children in the home and continued farming the land. William was one of the founding corporators of Trenton First Church. He joined the congregation in 1734, along with his mother, Joanna. Sometime before 1774, he moved to a retirement home on present-day Wilbertha Road in West Trenton. His grandson, William Enoch Green, later built another home on the property, Cherry Grove, which still stands today. Little Billy, as his father, Reverend Enoch, called him, married a granddaughter of Reverend Guild. He fell from a horse at age 42, died, and was buried in Ewing Church Cemetery. William and Lydia's oldest son, Enoch Green, was a noted Presbyterian minister and valedictorian of the Princeton University class of 1760. He presided over the construction of the Deerfield and Maidenhead Presbyterian churches. He also served as a battalion chaplain at Fort Washington in 1776, in the company of his brother-in-law, Lieutenant Colonel John Beatty. In December 1776, Enoch died of the camp fever and was buried in the aisle of Deerfield Church. When William Jr. died in 1784, he left the original homestead to William III, Enoch's brother. William married Phoebe Moore in 1772. The Reverend John Guile performed the ceremony in the Moore's Hopewell home. Phoebe was a second cousin of Clement Seymour, author of A Visit from St. Nicholas. Since their wedding day, William and Phoebe lived in the old farmhouse, where they raised 7 children. William was a deacon of Old Trenton Church. He served in the Hunterdon militia. He enlisted as a private at the start of the war in 1776. He was eventually promoted to ensign, then lieutenant. He was at the Battle of Trenton, Mercer's Mills, Amboy, Blazing Star, Smith's Farm, the Battle of Monmouth, Staten Island, Elizabethtown, and other places. There were 2 divisions in the Hunterdon unit, which rotated duty on a monthly basis. Whenever he and his neighbor Robert Lanning were out together on duty, the Lanning family moved in with the Greens. Robert's son John was 9 years old in 1776. He later said that he had frequently heard his father and the said William Green and other Revolutionary soldiers talk over the events of the war, that he well remembers seeing wars frequently of history, them in their knapsacks, when getting ready to go out on duty, and that a number of the light horse of Washington's army billeted at different times during the war at William Green's plantation. Israel Carl was a member of that light horse. At the time he was married to Liza Stevens, who died in 1790. 2 years later, Israel married Lydia Green, William III's daughter. Lydia was much younger than Israel, being only 4 years old in 1776. They lie buried together in Ewing Church Cemetery. Their former farm stands behind their graves, bordered by present-day Scotch, Carlton, Lower and Upper Ferry Roads. William III died in 1815 at age 72. Until her death 22 years later, Phoebe continued living in the home, along with her sons Elijah and Samuel. Samuel had married Mary Perrine of Monmouth County in 1813. The couple raised a family of 9 in the farmhouse. He is believed to be responsible for the current look of the house, adding several rooms during the Federal period. Samuel also purchased an adjacent farm from the Hendrickson family. Polly died in 1847. Samuel was a notorious practical joker. His nickname was Devil Sam. Ironically, he died on April Fool's Day, 1857. Before Samuel's death, the farm was divided between 2 of his sons. William A. Green took possession of all land east of Shabakunk Creek, toward Ewingville Road. Henry Perrine Green stayed in the old house and operated the farm and land west of the creek. For $1 and an agreement to support his father, Henry purchased the house from Samuel in 1848. He had married Virginia Reeder in 1843. The Reverend Eli F. Cooley performed the ceremony. They had 6 children, two of whom died in childhood or adolescence. In 1879, the Greens lost the original farm and the house on a peach crop endeavor. They did retain the adjacent farm, however. They are buried here in Ewing Church, near Virginia's parents, the Reeders. The last Green born in the old farmhouse was Amos Reeder Green, who was buried near William Green. He and his wife Myra Hellings lived in the old Hendrickson farmhouse until their death in the 1940s. They are buried near the other Greens, along with their son Robert Reeder Green, author of The Land Along the Shabbaconks. In 1879, Henry sold the farm to Lydia Ann Moore, who may have been a relative. The trustees of her estate conveyed the property to Willis Bainbridge in 1910. The acreage of the farm was shrinking continually, from 251 acres in 1833 to 197 in 1848 to 155 when Henry sold in 1879. Here's how the house looked in 1930. The house proper is off to the left. After a series of transactions, A. Jewel Blackwell bought the house with 125 acres in 1915. The house and outbuildings had fallen into ill repair, but the Blackwells were fine farmers. They soon had the place in good shape. They modernized the house, adding electricity and indoor plumbing. The Blackwells held the house and most of the remaining farm until the state of New Jersey bought them out to create the site for Trenton State College. The state of New Jersey occupation of the campus was completed by 1934, and the William Green House has been in its possession ever since. Compare the house today to how it looked in the 1950s. But how did the house look in 1750? Well, that is a subject of much debate. The available documents shed very little light on the house itself, its size, number of rooms, type of construction, or dates of erection or alteration. The house that John Severance had owned may or may not have stood on the site of the present house. William Green, Jr. was residing elsewhere when he died in 1786, so his inventory of that date is not relevant. The inventory of 1815 is relevant, but not very helpful. The 1832 survey map of Bull Lane makes no note of any buildings. There is only enough documentary evidence to establish chain of title, and little more.